Day one starts and you're feeling unstoppable. You've got it all planned out. Today is the start of a new routine, new schedule, new habit, the new you. And it feels incredible. This time you're sticking through. This time it's different. And now let's fast forward to day 14 because we've both been there. The alarm goes off and the internal negotiation starts. You're tired. It's one day. You'll double down tomorrow. You tell yourself that you had a long day yesterday at work and today you're just not feeling it. It is totally reasonable to just skip one day. And even though you have already made up your mind to do nothing today, deep down you know that this ain't the first day that you skipped. And then comes the tough part. You add it to the pile. The piles of things that you promise yourself to commit but never pull through long enough. And you're surrounded by all the evidence. Is that pair of running shoes by the door that you bought and only wore a handful of times? The journal that sits on your desk collecting dust with only 9 entries since 2.5 years ago? The language app on your phone that still sends you passive-aggressive notification every single day? And the pile whispers the same sentence every single time in your own voice. You can't stick with anything. If you got a pile just like that, if this sounds exactly like your struggle, this episode is for you. Welcome to Self-Full, the show where we figure out what's really going on in our heads when we keep getting in our own way. My name is Wilson, and I'm not a discipline guru. I'm far from it. I too have a huge pile of abandoned routines and projects, and it took me years to figure out why everything I started kept dying and how to build things that actually survives me. And this is the problem that the majority of us have. Starting something strong, but ending up going back to the old habits and letting what we wanted to change die quietly. All the while, the thing we ended up abandoning becomes the story being written about us. And this matters because the pile doesn't just sit there. Every dead start makes the next one heavier until one day you just quit starting anything new completely. And that is the real cost. Today, we're going to go over why it always dies at the same roughly 2 weeks mark. And that is not a coincidence. It's not discipline. It's not laziness. The real reason is something almost nobody ever tells us. We're going to go over why can't you just push through it. And by the end of this episode, you will walk away with moves that helps you plan your new habit with minimal burnout down the road. How to keep yourself going even on the moments that you're not feeling your best. And the mindset shift to help you track your progress correctly and keep you motivated. Stick around. This is where we finally push past day 14. Let's break down this pattern honestly because it's oddly consistent. The first few days, you're buzzing with energy. You're not just doing the thing. You feel like the type of person who actually does it now. By day 4 to 8, you're still going, but it's starting to feel like it's taking a toll. And from day 9 to 13, you miss the session, maybe make it up, and then miss another one. And around day 14, pure silence. You just don't have the drive to keep going anymore. Here's the kicker that nobody talked about. This same pattern pops up no matter what you're trying to start, whether it's fitness, studying, meditating, tracking a creative project, or even something as simple as just drinking more water. Different goal, but the same outcome. And that's why it feels so personal. If this happened with everything you try, then the common denominator is you. That's the math your brain figures out. And suddenly, your goals turn into a pile of proof about who you are. This is where your motivations disappears. Because the more you look at the piles of previous goals that never got achieved, the more you'll believe that you're just not the type of person who can pick up anything new again. Over time, this becomes who you are associated with. It slowly becomes part of your identity. You eventually stop learning new things, pick up a healthier habit, and start any new personal projects while the rest of the world slowly moves past you. Until one day you feel like you just can't keep up anymore, which only solidifies this one belief. You are not the person who can ever learn or pick up anything new. Not anymore. This old dog can never learn any new tricks ever again. And I want to clarify something before we dive deeper. That belief is wrong. Not wrong in a be nicer to yourself way. It's just plain factually incorrect. And I'm here to explain why. So let's start with why it fails. The truth is, the failure was already built in before you even started. Which brings us to point 1. The plan was built for the wrong person. Think about who came up with your new plan. Day 1 you is a whole different person, whole different vibe. You are rested, full of inspiration, and you're both physically and mentally ready to kick things off. That version of you sat down and laid out an awesome plan. Gym for 5 times a week, wake up at 6, cutting out sugar, and study for an hour every night. It all seemed easy, and you felt great signing in. But here's the catch. You're not the same you every single day. You're not the same person in day 2, day 5, day 10, day 14, and so on. Those different you are the one who actually has to stick it through. And those different you are rarely in the same condition as the day 1 you. Day 3 you might be tired from working overtime. Day 6 you might be busy attending your friend's birthday party. Day 9 you is way too distracted by your husband's comment on that one thing that bugs you. You see, every single one of you on different day is just dealing with the regular ups and downs of life. The plan that the day 1 you came up with didn't really factor any of that in. And honestly, most plans don't. Most plans focus on the promise of the outcome, but rarely focuses on what it really looked like for you in different days, your different days. Now let's get into the science. Researchers found that self-control acts like a muscle. It needs fuels, it needs energy, and it can run out. This shows that discipline is not a personality trait. It is a skill, and like many other skills, it needs to be developed. And it also requires energy from you. And every time you say no to a temptation, every decision you make, every emotion you manage throughout the day, it's all drawing energy from the same tank. And guess what? Starting a brand new routine is the toughest thing you can do with that fuel tank because it's not automatic yet. Every little thing demands your willpower. And that's why the burnout happens so quickly within 2 weeks. You see, this is not a problem with your character. It's about your energy budget. So how do you change things up? And here's your first step. Plan for a near empty tank. Take whatever you want to start or restart and cut it down to something that even the toughest day version of you can handle. Forget the day 1 enthusiasm. Think about the version of you who had a rough night, the version of you that's feeling off, the version of you that is just exhausted, the near empty tank version of you. Shrink it past what you think is reasonable. Maybe an hour of study turns into just 1 page. That 5K you wanted to run daily becomes simply putting on your shoes and walk to the corner. And 20 minutes of meditation could just be taking 3 breaths while sitting on your bed. If you're listening to this and thinking, dude, that's way too small to bother with, then great. That's exactly the size that's doable. And here's why this works. Keeping a streak going is what actually matters, not how much you can do each day. A super tiny version barely uses up your willpower, so it'll still happen on those tough days where most plans fall apart. Plus, the more you do it, the more automatic it becomes. And that's the goal, because automatic action don't tire you out. You're not just building the habit, you're building a person who can handle it, one manageable day at a time. On good days, you can always do more, but the plan itself shouldn't rely on it. Here's what that looks like. Say you and your roommate decided to learn a new language together, and you guys decided to do 1 hour every single night, with flashcards, online tutor, the whole shebang. The first week, you're both super into it, sending each other random words at midnight and feeling like you guys are making progress. But by week 2 though, your roommate is swamped with work, and you're starting to feel a cold coming in. So that evening study time starts slipping away. By day 13, neither of you even exchange flashcards. On day 14, no one brings it up. But instead of letting the whole thing just fizzle out like before, you recognize what's going on. You and your roommate's plan only work for the first week's energy, not for the weeks after. So you suggested a much simpler approach. Just 1 flashcard a day. And even a quick 30-second review counts. Your roommate laughs at how small it is, but on a grim, rainy Thursday 3 weeks later, even when motivation is nowhere to be found, you and your roommate still manage to do 1 flashcard every single day. Over time, every small lessons each day begins to pile. Your vocabulary bank has been silently increasing without you and your roommate feeling like putting much effort into it. I wish I knew this trick way earlier because I have a whole graveyard of plans that I never stick through. But let me tell you about the one plan of mine that actually survived and why. A few years back, I decided to change how I eat. The goal was to lose some weight and stay healthy. And the plan was very simple. 1 meal a day. Dinner only, no breakfast, no lunch, and starting immediately. Breakfast was easy. I was never a big breakfast person anyway. But lunch? By noon, my stomach was growling so loud I was worried my colleague could hear it. And there I was sitting in my cubicle while everyone around me opened up their lunch and the smell just floats over. That right there was my empty tank, literally running on nothing and surrounded by food. You see, when I made the commitment of doing one meal a day, that version of me wasn't hungry at the time. And now the hungry version of me is paying for it. The hungry version of me will never agree to this plan. So instead of quitting the whole thing, which is what every earlier version of me would have done, I gave myself a new deal. I'll still eat lunch, just half my usual portion, and I drink more water to keep my stomach feeling full. And that was it. Half a lunch was something even the hungriest, most tired version of me could manage. Then, slowly, I kept trimming that portion down a little at a time. And about 2 months in, I skipped lunch completely. And by then, it honestly barely felt like a change. And that was 5 years ago. I still eat this way today. My hunger doesn't even show up until dinner time now. My body just runs on this new schedule. I've lost the weight that I wanted, and I've stayed pretty healthy since. And to be clear, I'm not telling you to eat like me. That was the right plan for my body, and yours might need a very different one. The part I want you to take is the shape of it. The big version died at lunchtime in week 1. The shrunk version is still alive 5 years later. Not because I'm disciplined, but because the plan stopped asking the day one me to show up every single day. So now that you know how to design plans suitable to get through even on your toughest days, that's the structure part. But just having a structure doesn't help with the other side of it. Those moments when you need to tackle even the smallest task, but you just can't seem to find the motivation. What you do in those moments is key, and that's where a lot of systems tend to break down, which leads us to point 2. Stop waiting to feel like it. Here's a thought you might not admit out loud, but it's the foundation of how you live. I need to feel like doing something before I actually do it. See, this thought seems straightforward, right? On day 1, you were all in and moving like a pro. But by day 9, where the enthusiasm is gone, you just sit around waiting for it to come back. You scroll through your phone, hoping for a spark or binge something motivational, basically trying to borrow that feeling. When it doesn't show, you tell yourself today is just not the day. According to this mindset, it's all about feeling first, action later. But actually think about it. You've experienced the opposite too. Think about those times you really didn't want to start something, but dove in anyway. And after a few minutes, you actually got into it. Like that workout you almost skipped, but turned out to be a blast. Or that assignment you dreaded, but wasn't actually so bad once you got going. Motivation isn't the fuel you need to kick things off. It's the reward that comes after you get moving. The whole system is upside down from how you've been using it. It's all about taking action first and then feeling good later. And that's why just waiting around can really hurt your routine, especially after starting something new. That initial excitement was just that one-time boost. It is not the engine driving your progress. If your plan relies on that feeling showing up every day, then it's built on something that just don't happen regularly. So what do you do when it's time to get going, but you're just not feeling it? And here's the second trick. Move before the mood. When it's your time to kick off those small tasks, but you're lacking the motivation, say this to yourself. I don't feel like it, but I'm doing 2 minutes of it anyway. And then just do that. 2 minutes. And here's the key point. It's totally fine to do it in an imperfect way. Write a rough draft of that awful paragraph. Do some stretch that aren't perfect. Read a page even if you're feeling grumpy about it. You don't have to enjoy it or do it flawlessly. Just make an effort for 2 minutes. Here's a scenario. Picture this. It's 9 p.m. and you're looking at a bunch of notes for an exam that is still 2 weeks away. But today, you're completely wiped out. Even just sitting up feels like a chore. Instead of trying to get into the studying mood, you tell yourself, I don't feel like it, but I'll give it 2 minutes. You open up that notebook and immediately you wanted to close it, but you give yourself 2 minutes, so you're sticking it through. The first minute was rough, but by around the 4th minute, you actually start studying. And before you know it, 35 minutes has flew by. The next night, same thing. You sat down and you still don't feel like studying. This night, same drill. You tell yourself, I don't feel like it, but I'm going to give it 2 minutes anyway. You open up those notes and you only stuck it through 2 minutes this night. You just can't keep going. But you know what? That is still a win and you know it. Because even if you didn't do more study than the previous night, you still did 2 minutes more studies tonight than the old you would have done. So why does this work? Because of two reasons. First, you don't need to shake off the reluctant feeling. You're holding on to, I don't feel like it, in one hand while still doing the thing with the other. Fighting against that feeling takes energy, but accepting it doesn't use up much energy at all. And the second reason, getting started is usually the hardest part of any task, and 2 minutes is something even a tired person can manage. What you just witnessed is pretty cool, right? One night your mood shows up halfway through, and the next night it didn't. But both nights ended up being a win. Both nights you committed it. And let me be completely honest about this podcast. Some of the episodes you've heard were made by a guy who didn't want to record that day. See, I pictured this show being energizing, full of ideas, but honestly, that's not always the case. A lot of Tuesdays, I sit down at the mic and just feeling totally unmotivated, like I'm gearing up to do my taxes or something. Not that I don't love doing this podcast, but because on some days, the mood for recording, editing, drafting for the next episode, it's just not there. You know what I mean? So here's my rule for those nights. I just say it to myself in this empty room. I don't feel like it, but I'll give it 2 minutes. And I will hit record, even if it doesn't sound great, which you could probably tell from some of the previous episodes. Usually, somewhere in that first part, I started to find my groove. I hear how lines should hit, and suddenly 20-some minutes goes by, and we've got an episode. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, and I wrap it up after 2 minutes, and that's cool too. A couple of rough minutes today on drafting a new episode still means I've made a bit of progress. And if I waited to feel inspired every time, honestly, there will probably be maybe 2 episodes out here by now. And I can honestly say that it's because of this move before the mood mindset, I'm still able to keep up with what I set out to do, to bring this podcast to you on a regular basis. So now that you learn how to keep things going without waiting for motivation, but let's be real, you're still going to miss some days. Life has a way of interrupting even the smallest routines, which leads us to point 3. Your pile does not define you. Let's finally take a look at that pile, the previous plan and habit that you wanted to pick up but didn't last for more than 2 weeks. That pile of dead promises is whispering something to you every single time you look at it. Every time you start something and gives up, it added a line to your story. 1 day routine? Not a big deal. 3? That's a pattern. By the time you hit 7, your brain has created this whole file. I can't stick with anything. This is just who I am. It's like that awful moment when someone acts like they know you inside out, like they've already made up their mind about who you are. Your mind does that to you too. It's been reading your file for years, and that file is pricey. It is why starting again feels way heavier than the very first time. You're not just trying to kick off a new plan. You're carrying a case against yourself. Shame burns fuels from the same tank as everything else, and eventually the file offers you a lousy deal. If you never start anything, you won't have to feel this way ever again. And that's when the pile wins. Not when you give up a habit, but when you don't even bother starting anymore. And all of that is based on one huge mistake. It counts every failure while ignoring every comeback. But flip that around for a second. From your perspective, 10 failed attempts feels like you messed up 10 times. But from someone else's view, that's the person who came back 10 times. Sticking with something was never about having one flawless journey. It's about returning time and time again with less drama each time. Everyone you envy for their consistency has their own pile. They just see theirs differently. Breaks in streaks are normal. That was never what mattered. The real skill is coming back. And here's the third move. Count your comebacks. Grab something to keep a record, like your note app or a notebook or something, and start a tally with one simple rule. It only counts returns. Every time you come back to something after dropping it, whether it's a day, a week, or even 3 months, doesn't matter. You don't need to look at the broken streak. You just look at how many times you actually jump back into it. See, that's the number that matters. And this is why this works. Because the story runs on selective evidence. When you're looking at your own pile, the old you will tell yourself, see, this is how many times you quit. It's hard to talk your way out of I am a quitter mindset, but you can definitely out-count it if that makes any sense. Every tally mark is proof that this person, you, returned. Now this gives you a new identity, the identity that should have existed in the first place. You are not a quitter. You are someone who comes back. So when you miss day 15, it's not a big deal. And day 16 isn't starting from 0 again. It's comeback number 9. and you add those to your count. Here's what that looks like. Your note app is probably stuffed with meal plans, reading lists, and those half-finished workout routines. This time though, you've been on it with a workout app, knocking out one quick follow-along session every day for 22 days in a row. Then your cousin's wedding takes up a whole week, and you come back to that all too familiar silence where your habit used to be. And just as you expected, that nagging voice pops into your head. 22 days and you blew it. Classic. But this time, you don't argue with that inner critic. Instead, you pull up the tally and it says 4. 4 tries to get back on track this year. You queue up for tomorrow's session and you write it down on your note app. Comeback number 5. And you set your phone down. The next day, even with the wedding jet lag, you still push through that one short workout. You know you're not a quitter and you ain't gonna let one broken streak stop where you're going. I too have my own tally and it has a shameful, wonderful history. The thing I keep starting over and over the most in my life is meditation, which is pretty funny for a guy who runs the podcast like this one. I've quit meditating more times than I could count, but one day I decided to log it. I would count how many days I've meditated, where does the streak end, and where's the next one begin. But I only pay attention to how many times I come back. And I gotta admit, it felt a bit like cheating. Before, when I got back into meditation after quitting for, let's say, 2 months, I would still carry that shameful spite toward myself, which makes jumping back into meditation even tougher. But when I start to only look at my comebacks, something surprising happens. Not only did the shame part kind of disappears, but the gap between each streak got shorter and shorter, and restarting felt easier. I don't see myself as a quitter anymore. I don't judge myself for breaking a streak, and getting back into meditation feels as natural as ever. Even though my meditation comeback count is kind of high, but it's the number I'm not ashamed about. Not anymore. That pile of dead start you've been reading as evidence, the running phase that you've stopped, the 9 journal entry that you haven't continued since 2 years ago, the language app with the guilt notification that's still popping up, the case it built was wrong on the facts. Every single thing on that pile is something you care enough to begin, and more than a few of them are the things you already came back to. The pile was never proof you can't stick with anything. It's proof you keep starting. And starting again is the entire skill. It just never got counted. It never got the attention it deserved. You were never broken. You were just between comebacks. So here's the recap. Keep things small and shrink your plan down to what you can handle on your toughest days. Make sure it's easy to do for not just the day 1 you, but also for day 14, day 27, day 50 you. On those days, when motivation is nowhere to be found, you move before the mood and just push through for a couple of minutes. And whether it feels good or not, you still win. And when life throws a wrench in your plan, and it will, don't beat yourself up. Just add to your comeback count and bounce back quicker this time. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with that one friend who's always trying to start over. I think you know exactly who I'm talking about. They're not flaky. They're just figuring it out. They're in mid-comeback and they could use some encouragement. And if you want to share your comebacks, you can find me on Instagram at selfful.podcast or leave it in the comments on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. Until then, whatever's on top of your pile, it isn't dead. It's just waiting for a comeback. And remember, I'm always here for you. Take care.